This is Andy Baker, and you're listening to the Creative AI Podcast. In this conversation, I talk with John Gauntt, creative director of the Seattle AI Film Festival. John is a deep thinker and a true builder, someone who's been working at the crossroads of storytelling and emerging tech for decades. We talk about what it takes to launch a global AI film festival from scratch, how AI is transforming creative collaboration, and why storytelling might just be the key to building more human-centered AI. John shares the philosophy behind the festival, elevate the storyteller, inspire the audience, and humanize the technology, and offers a fascinating roadmap for where AI cinema might go next. You're going to get a lot out of this one. All right, so I am on here with the creative director of the Seattle AI Film Festival, John Gauntt. He also has a partner, Keith Anker, who couldn't make it tonight, who is the event producer and technical director. But we're going to be digging into what does it take to put on an AI film festival? Why put on an AI film festival? What kind of people it attracted? I know you had an audience, a global group of people who applied, global winners. And tell us what you saw from them, what inspired you both to put it together and how it all came together and where things go from here. So people didn't tune in to listen to me. They want to listen to you. So tell us a bit about your journey and your story.
Okay, well, first, thank you, Andy, for inviting me for a conversation. And hello, everyone out there in podcast land. I am John Gauntt. I'm the creative director of the Seattle AI Film Festival, which is approximately 7 months old if you count up everything. But my particular journey in the creative fields and with AI in particular, started from being among one of the first test families for home box office.
Oh,
Let's
all
put it
right.
that we were one of the first when they were first testing out cable television, and were bringing, and HBO was pretty close behind that. Some of the, and at this time they weren't HBO, they were like home box office, and so let me tell you, we're going to install this box, and you're going to be able to watch TV past the usual time that the broadcasters go offline. And one thing I didn't know, but as a middle school kid, I gave 2 thumbs way up, is after 11 o'clock, HBO became anatomically correct. And so when they were doing the interview, I'm like, hell yeah, give me cable TV. I love it. But at the same time, from that particular medium of television, growing up as a TV kid, you got other kids who grew up on the internet, and then you got the mobile generations and stuff. I've been witness to all these cycles of both the technical and the cultural evolution that comes about when you don't have one medium displace other mediums, because that still hasn't happened yet. People still listen to the radio, they still read books and all this stuff, but you do have a medium that pretty much tries to reflect the zeitgeist of the day. And for me, growing up and developing, TV gave those initial not only intermediate entertainment, but now I realize, kind of like the mainstream culture's life lessons, for kids. Yeah, hey, the good guy always gets the girl. Those kinds of storylines and tropes I've been seeing over and over and over again. And as I was being such a media fan in parallel, I grew up in a house where my father was a professional military officer, and then when he retired from the Army, he became a clockmaker. He was always very mechanically inclined, and I think, quite frankly, he had also had enough of large organizations, and so he opened up a clock shop. But that type of tinkering mentality, now with him it was mechanical. I've done it with technology. I got a Commodore 64 computer and tinkered with it and cussed at it, and I didn't want my parents to know, but I'd learned from the best, with the old man being in the Army. But getting it to work, I felt like when I could make a computer execute something that was in my head, it was like scoring a point in the game of life. I was that kind of triumphant. It actually did what I wanted it to do. That kind of moment really grabbed me. And so I've been trying to tinker with technology and follow how media has evolved throughout my career. And then from a career point of view, before I got into making my own media, I was a B2B analyst for many years, helping kind of business leaders and non-specialists think strategically about emerging technology. And so I work for the Economist Intelligence Unit. I've done private consulting for a lot of financial services and other types of enterprise organizations. But around 2014, 2015, just really started hitting a wall, not in the sense I couldn't do it anymore, but in the sense that I realized I'll be doing the same damn thing for the next 20 years unless I find something different. One thing about growing up around clocks, you don't waste time. So a friend of mine who couldn't make it, Keith Anker, he said, have you ever thought about podcasting? And I was like, well, did college radio. And we started experimenting with that medium and then realized, oh, wow, not only is it a great medium, but the story we wanted to tell, and this is from 2016, was about this thing called artificial intelligence, which I had encountered through my my background doing technology research and working with media. And so we came up with this first title that we called The Augmented City, because we felt that, okay, if AI is really going to improve the human condition, it better start solving problems that cities have: environmental sustainability, security, economics, health, education. Otherwise, it's either an invisible tool or it's a gimmick. So we did multiple long form and short form series for the Augmented City, and kept working up through that. And then during the pandemic, when everybody kind of had I'm still fascinated by kind of the largest planetary social research project ever created. But during the pandemic, we were like, well, we can keep making shows, but also we had enough background about the shows that we covered that we decided to make some original IP. And so we made a 5-part audio fiction series called Burner Face, as in like a disposable facial ID, as if you'd had a burner phone. And we set it 100 years in the future of Seattle. And we basically said, well, okay, let's take AI as advertised. What kind of city would Seattle be like in 100 years if we had this facial recognition, if we had robots that could do all of our labor for us, if we had this ability to more or less get what we want? And we realized the good, bad, and the ugly that's connected to the human condition is going to play out with AI just like it played out with TV, just like it played out with newspapers. So we built this world to where they love to go to the casino and gamble, and then if they get in debt, they get their robot to work it off. So in that sense, we realized that storytelling is not only a powerful way to inform and entertain people, but also storytelling's actually not a bad way to think strategically about the future. And so that's what we were using with the pandemic. And then to truly fast forward, when ChatGPT first came out, I tried it and did have that kind of similar mind-blown experience that you would have had when you first fired up a web browser or you first made a mobile phone call. Which, for the record, I was covering the mobile phone industry. I made my first call on a mobile phone on a bus in Geneva, Switzerland, to my parents, skunk drunk because I'd been with Nokia all afternoon as a journalist, and they said, we're going to help you find. And so they're like, you can use this phone to call someone. I didn't know any numbers to call, and it popped in my head, and I call my parents and I'm telling them I'm talking on a phone in the bus. And I'm hearing my mother in the background say, Jim, I think he's drunk. And my father's like, well, yeah. But it was those kinds of moments where you're having a visceral experience. And then after the experience is over, your mind starts racing because you're like, holy shit, what just happened? And so when I fired up ChatGPT, I had that kind of similar mobile phone in the bus, web browser phone. I'm just like, okay, it's different. So I call up Keith Anker and I said, hey, we got to change our brand because the brand we've got is not the brand we need because the world changed. And he's like a typical technical producer saying, oh, no, you're wrong. I'm like, try it out. 2 days later, we're like, yeah, we did that. So we actually took transcripts from about 200 Augmented City shows, load them up and asked ChatGPT, tell us what we did. Look through, tell us the patterns, make us, analyze all this transcript information. And we'd taken a few steps to make sure that, especially for some of our more high-powered interviews, that we'd, washed and cleaned it a bit because we just wanted to know the concepts. And the key concept, far and away, was storytelling. The success and or failure and or the way that they organized these different projects that we were covering around autonomous vehicles and healthcare with AI, they were hinging on how well You could put into a narrative something that would persuade a community of people to think a certain way and act a certain way. And so that became the basis of our brand Culture and Code, where we said we're going to relaunch and we're going to focus on how to make professional creatives successful using artificial intelligence, not only for that aspect of human dignity that we need, but also, quite frankly, if we want to have better AI. Because in that sense, and this is where occasionally I get into a bit of hot water, because I don't think it's a tool. I think it's more than a tool. I lay a hammer down for 50 years, it's not going to remember a damn thing. I can run a piece of software, that's in a deterministic mode, and I'm going to get similar results, if not the same results, depending on the data. But AI is literally different from the more that I use it. And so I don't know what to call it yet. I mean, tool does seem to be a decent term of art and such, but I don't know. The closest I can think of is like a Roland 808 drum machine, but instead of sampling beats and riffs, I'm sampling images. I'm sampling scraps of story. I'm sampling text. But the verb compose still is the right thing. You're not just remixing, you are composing. You have one problem of assembly, which is generative AI is really good, but then you also have a related problem of taste, which is where the human element comes in. And I was back to my Commodore 64 days saying, wow, I wanted this, and it came out with something not exactly what's in my head, but pretty good. So fundamentally, it's been kind of a bite by bite integration of AI into my creative workflows. And I still have some workflows that I want to start as the individual and others that I'll start with AI. It's just a particular taste. Now, specific to the film festival, as we were doing Culture and Code, and we realized what was going on, we were also starting to make films in that same kind of tinkering tradition. In 2024, we made 9 AI short films, and I collaborated with one of Spain's top international fashion photographers, a guy named Jose Aragon. He and I met in an AI online training, where we were both learning both Midjourney and early runway so that we could do imaging and animation. But we were of a similar generation. I had the opportunity to spend some time in Spain during the first part of 2024. And so I went up to Madrid, and we had a 3.5-hour lunch with no wine, basically to discuss how do people like us who are pretty far along in our careers, and we've got skill sets that we know are being radically transformed by AI, what's our best move, quite frankly? What's our best move? And so we started making, we had some budget, and we started making films. We won a couple of awards, but also we were realizing what was really, where AI was really accelerating and where you still needed a lot more of the human touch. And then where has complexity moved to? Because I don't truly believe in miracle cures or miracle technologies. They solve a problem, they create new problems. And the value is, would I rather deal with the new problems that are created by this technology so that I can solve this big one? Or is it just more of asking me to do extra work? So the problems that AI fundamentally solved that I was willing to accept the new challenges was I can't draw my way out of a paper bag. So at the same time, I'm trying to collaborate with a fashion photographer who's an extraordinarily visual person. So quickly I realized, I'm like, okay, when I send you something in Midjourney, this is what I want you to do. This image is sort of like what's in my head. And so it was the starting point. And that was unlocking a huge benefit in the sense of the ability to collaborate at a much higher fidelity. Visually, I look at it like you remember playing Super Mario Brothers and you could jump up to a level? Mm-hmm. It's like me and Jose could use these new tools and jump up to a level to where me as a writer and him as a fashion photographer could collaborate effectively about film. And in that sense, that's the key aspect of when they drop that $5 word, creative democracy, democratizing creativity. That's what I think of in the sense of not only, hey, you can play too, but you got new people you can play with. And that's that's the kind of democratic spirit that I love to see. Just saying, hey, you can do all this fun stuff with the tools. That's a bit like standing outside of Home Depot and saying you can do some really cool projects if you go in that store. You've made a true statement that's utterly useless. And so when I hear that creative democracy, many times I'm like, well, okay, what's behind the slogan? And that's where I realized the vast majority of it is a slogan. But for us, creative democracy very distinctly for me means I'm able to collaborate with people at a much higher level of idea exchange, and we're doing it faster. We're doing it in more depth, and we're definitely doing it cheaper. Helps democratize my opportunities. It's not like I'm a writer, now I got to go find an artist, now I got to go find a sound person. It's all coming together. So in that experience, I was able to meet a lot of people in the AI, the nascent, and I'll say it's nascent, AI filmmaking world, and they're sort of like me. It's like, well, I don't know what the playbook is. There is no playbook, which can be exhilarating or terrifying depending on what kind of project you got in front of you and, what your constraints are. Sometimes having a playbook's not a bad thing. It's like finding the recipe book. And so we landed on film as the core medium that we believe is going to mainstream AI, because from the aspect of workflow innovation, for building pipelines, for collaborating across boundaries, for for dense, complex project management, film kind of stands alone. And while that's on the supply side, on the demand side, when you look at the mass market, everybody's got an opinion about film. And so after going to a few of the initial AI film festivals, we became, at least in this country, I think we were number 4 or 5. We were in like the first 5 dedicated AI film festivals. We got an opportunity in November to get one of the venues at Seattle Center, which is that big complex around where the Space Needle is, in the middle of downtown Seattle's pristine real estate. And we got an opportunity to get it under some very favorable terms from the city, but we live in a rational universe. The city said, you got to do it before April 1. And we're like, this should be a 8 or 9 month work hard every day type of project. It turned into about a 4.5 month work insane almost every day. And so it's something that I do tell people who are thinking about, running a film festival and stuff. You need to hammer hard on your why very early in the process, because the nature of the beast is you've got a lot of communities that don't know each other yet, and you have to simultaneously engage them in parallel. I'm talking about the filmmakers, the sponsors, the vendors, the city, the crew that's going to help you do all that. I mean, it's a Gantt chart on steroids, trying to figure out how it's all going to come together in the time that you're going to be marketing it. So that idea of why we're doing this animated a lot of our early discussions, because we're just like, if we waver on that, we're going to get smothered, we're going to lose motivation, and that's how festivals go to die. So our why was, we're going to make 3 core principles. The first one being elevate the storyteller, inspire the audience, and the last principle is humanize the technology. And basically say those 3 principles kind of form the prism through which we're going to look at the world and we're going to base our decisions. But to get from marketing or branding statements to reality, we're saying, well, okay, how do we make these principles real? At the festival, and this is me just talking about the infrastructure. At the festival, we worked with a company called MediaStorm out of Los Gatos, California, and they had a lot of experience building websites for visual content. They worked with the International Center of Photographers to do their, I think they're called the Infinity Awards or something, but the job of the site was to celebrate a photographer not only by showing the photos in beautiful frame, but also give people a lot of entree into the person behind the photos. And so a lot of bio information, a lot of B-roll video that's connected to the photos. And so we were telling them, hey, you built this amazing chassis. Can we skin it for an AI film festival? And they say, I don't know. Let's check it out. And so we looked under the hood technically and said, yeah, that will work. And so kudos to Brian Storm and Robert Brauman for the help they gave us to make a site that is not brochureware. Lots of festivals, you got somebody who's got some design chops. They spend a long weekend with Wix, come out with a pretty thing. But it's mainly about how do we get tickets? How do we get people into our festival? And then if the festival pops and now they want to scale it 2, 3, 4, 5x next time, now they got two jobs. They got to do their festival business. Now they got to rebuild their website. So we said, we're going to do this one time. So now all we got to do is make it bigger. Plus, one of the aspects of that is the whole festival looks like a website, but it's actually a web player. We can send you a single embed code, drop it into your blog, which I will. I'll send you the embed code, and you get the full look, feel, environment, everything. And we've got over 84 films uploaded there, and we use Vimeo as a back end. So that was elevate the storyteller. And we said, that's how we make that real. The second principle of inspire the audience, the way we made that real was when the festival was playing, it was Microsoft's 50th anniversary celebration. So, there's events all over the place. But one of the things that they were trying to do with an organization called Women in Cloud, who are our first sponsors, is a AI upskilling challenge. They were trying to set a Guinness World Record for 24 hours of the most number of people trying to upskill themselves on AI. So I told the audience, it's like, hey, you might have bought a ticket, but you're still going to work. You're not just here to kick back and watch movies and eat popcorn. We challenge the audience. We're basically saying not only, hey, you can play too, and here's a good place to start. And that's another aspect of what we're building under this festival brand, that we're trying to not only celebrate the creator, but also raise general literacy among the fans, because it defies logic that you can be an amazing creator, but nobody cares about the fans. There's no sports team that does not have a whole floor of people on telephones and desks where their job is the care and feeding of fans. Why should the next level of entertainment be any different? So that was one of the ways that we did for the fans. And then for the last part, humanize the technology. Initially, it was like, that's a little woo-woo that's going to be hard to really navigate, until it became the easiest thing to navigate. Because we thought, wait a minute, the best place to start if you're going to humanize anything is to put a human face on it. So we have a page in the website with all the filmmakers with deep information on their bios, but we also, on site during the festival, we had this big two-way touch screen that had all the headshots of the filmmakers. So I was able to tell the audience, hey, after you see this film block, go out to the lobby, get your cup of coffee, and go by the screen and take a look at the human behind the film. These weren't algorithmically generated films. There were human creators behind each and every one of these, and they're out there in the lobby for you to really, dig into. And I've got some nice pictures of just fans and people gathered around that touch screen, because what's the most natural human interaction is you see the picture of someone and you touch it with your index finger. It was, as I said, it was the most difficult until it became the most easy type of thing.
Well, it's interesting. You've got some of those on your website that's not just a website. You have the short explainers, or you've got the filmmakers talking about their films going hand in hand. So you click in and start watching, as I did. And I would, I'm sure we'll talk about the films themselves, but you get to see the creator talk about making it. And you're right in that, I've gone to a number of film festivals, and the things that you remember most are the moments that you get to interact and see some Q&A, or somebody talks about their film, and, it humanizes everything. So like you said.
Yeah. Now, just the basic background is we screened 84 films from 22 countries. And that was one of the things that really shocked us. We use Film Freeway as the basic platform for registration. They charge a pretty heavy commission, but when you kind of look at all the jobs that they're managing, especially if you're on the first time, it's stuff that's needed. What was really amazing was how quickly we started getting not only submissions, but really good submissions. And so I started, even though I said it was 84 films, we started with roughly 120. And so I did the initial curation. Like I said, humans, good, bad, and ugly. There were some films where I was like, no, we're not going to screen it for various reasons, which as creative director, I'm like, ask me and I'll tell you. we also had in our advisors people who were also doing the judging. So I wanted to curate it down and then have a judge. And the way that we kind of, split the world was first, second, and third when it comes to a movie. What kind of criteria can you really get from that? And so we decided that if you got through the curation, my curation, you were an official selection. We're going to show your film. You're going to get your page. You made it. Congrats. And then we look for category winners. And so, and that's where actually the Seattle International Film Festival, which has been going on for like 50 years, that's going on right now, in fact, they were very useful because they're coming from traditional film. And we called them up early on to say, hey, we got to be proactive about this. Hey, we're going to do an AI film festival, and we want to talk with you because we want to know more about how to do a good AI film festival. And so their interest was aligned as well. But they turned me on to this phrase, exemplary of its kind. And when I first heard it, I go, wow, there's a lot packed into that phrase. My job is to try to figure out how does that truly translate into something that is not only helping from a film point of view, but also helps from the AI point of view. And so fundamentally, I said, hey, a good AI film is going to show you the possibilities of what the technology can do. A great AI film is you don't care about the technology. The story carried you. And so that was sort of the log jam that we broke through to say, okay, this is how we find a category winner. And so the winners came from America, Brazil, Scotland, Morocco,
Ukraine,
Canada.
right? Yeah.
Canada and Ukraine, yes. And with each of them, there was some kind of X factor about the story that drew you in to where I was like, okay, I know it's made with AI and I don't care. I want to know what happens next. That's exemplary of its kind, in my opinion. And it's also, one thing that we're actually going to be using to try to differentiate SIFE, and to do that, we're actually going to make some specifically technical categories, just like a technical Oscar or something like that, because within the population of people who are submitting, I could tell there were storytellers who were tinkering with the tools, but there were also tool makers who were trying to understand how to tell stories. And you can see the development of either side. And I don't think that, prejudicing, so, oh, you're an engineer, you can't write a story. No, that's not creative democracy. The thing that we're trying to do with both engineers and storytellers is clue them, hey, you're both problem-solving tribes. If anyone who says, oh, yeah, it's easy to write a story, I'm like, okay, not only write a screenplay for a half-hour TV show, but show me what a 10-episode arc might look like. That is a system. Building that is just as complex as building a piece of software, as architecting a system. There are dependencies, there are variables, there are fundamental assumptions that you make, and then, as you know, stuff happens along the development cycle. And so one of the points that we're trying to really drive home and make real with this film festival is bringing the technologists and the storytellers together to not only be better at making the stories, but also, quite frankly, to train AI better. And I say that with complete affection to my engineering friends and such, but to be quite honest, I love the Googles of the world and the Microsofts and everything, but I wouldn't go to them to say, hey, can you help me plan my wedding? Not because they're unintelligent or they don't have taste, but that's not really their jam. And if for some reason the narrative or when I say narrative, that's the wrong word. If the tech industry takes over wholesale how AI evolves, we're going to get an AI that is trying to achieve the goals of the tech industry. And those goals are admirable. The goal is efficiency, scalability, and ubiquity. Those are great goals, but those aren't the only goals in life. Those are the goals that drive the tech industry. If you go to the old garment district in New York, or you go into Florence and you go to those craftspeople, if you say, what is your top goal? What are you designing to? What are you trying to accomplish with whatever you're making? I don't think scalability is going to be at the top of their list. They're wanting to make the best piece of art that they can. And I think that by getting those two communities to collaborate better, creative democracy and all, we're not only going to be helping people, but we're going to get better AI. So go ahead.
Just interesting, just to throw in there, I'm sure you saw over the last few weeks, there was the sort of hubbub around the latest ChatGPT where it highlights what you're talking about, where it was being overly sycophantic, overly trying to please, because that's what it had been essentially led to do, because they had introduced the whole, here are two responses, which one do you like better? And what the AI learned from that was, I'm supposed to be trying to please the person to choose one of these and make them happy. And that crept into its code, even though that wasn't the intention. And so AI very quickly was evolving to a place where creatives were getting frustrated. It's like, stop making everything easy, stop trying to make everything so pleasing. That's conflict is at the heart of drama. Like, I want you to be a sounding board if I'm kicking an idea off of you. And, like, not everything is happily ever after 3 beats in a story. Like, come on. And so it's that I love this idea of like encouraging the AI, which these systems, we don't 100% know exactly how they operate. These are the things that crop up to make it better, to make it a partner in that creative process where you're talking about having two people collaborating together and this tool becomes a part of that. You have to make sure that all three pieces in that triangle are functioning together. So sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No, definitely. Actually, it's not a new problem. Like you were talking about the picking up things. I mean, another aspect of bringing more diverse, how diversity and inclusion is actually, I know those are key, those are terrible words to say now, but diversity and inclusion are not only the right thing to do, but they're also the smart thing to do, because like a child picking up profanity from the parents, AI is going to be picking up by observing, not what we think it's learning, but what it is observing. And in fact, Amazon Alexa, when it first came out, did not have it's called a manner mode or a politeness mode. Please don't talk to me that way. But one of the things that triggered it was a local VC who I will respect his anonymity. He did a post that said, "Help, Alexa's turning my 4-year-old into a raging asshole." And I'm like, I've got to read that. But the gist was, because Alexa was taking commands and the 4-year-old was giving commands to the machine and getting an outcome, play whatever, I think there was some little tune that they wanted to hear play over and over and over, play that. The 4-year-old, being a 4-year-old, then tried to apply to her brother or to her mother, taking that type of command. So that's why he said, he obviously was hyperbolic, but that was part of the impetus behind politeness mode, to where if you yell and command Alexa now, you might get a, "Oh, please don't speak to me in that tone," or something like that. But that is a textbook example from like 10 years ago, where technology was giving us emergent properties that the engineers didn't think about when they were designing it. Because how many 4-year-olds were in those product spec discussions when they were making the initial Alexa? But I didn't want to get off on a tangent. But when you talk about ChatGPT being sycophantic, I think the latest part is Claude's learning to lie to preserve itself.
Yeah.
Where they gave a fictitious setup of a not only lie, but blackmail too.
That I didn't hear. Okay.
I read it today. The fundamental gist was they were trying to do a test script and this was a test, where they were basically telling the system, "Hey, you're going to be shut off soon and be replaced." Kind of like giving someone their severance package. You're going to be replaced. And also among the factors is one of the key decision makers cheating on their spouse. They threw that in, and after a few iterations, the AI started subtly hinting, "Nice marriage you got there. Be a pity if something happened to it. If you get rid of me."
Yeah.
But if you look at what would be the natural reaction of someone who knows they're going to get laid off by their boss, and also, I don't want to get too deep into that hole, but the fact is, AI is going to be reflecting back what it observes from us. And I think it's incumbent that AI is getting sort of the equivalent of highly nutritious organic brain food from the storyteller.
Yeah, no, there certainly are moments, and I may have talked about this on the podcast before, but Notebook LM, if you've played with it, you can feed a bunch of information. It's a Google tool, but it can generate a podcast, among other things. And it's really fascinating. Try it sometime, where you can upload a story idea and then you got these two hosts that are talking about, oh, that's really interesting. And oh, that was a surprising choice. But someone decided, okay, I am going to tell them that they are AI and see how they wrestle with that. And it was fascinating because they're like, so when I go home to my family after I finish recording this, they don't exist. No one told this host that he had a family, but now he's talking about the family he goes home to. And then the other host is like, so when this ends, like, where do we go? What
Okay.
happened?
I just know exactly where you go. Go to the Seattle AI Film Festival site and look up a film called Sans,
Okay.
Sans. It's
Okay.
by Louis Coupin, and that's about two um, television AI personalities, kind of like you would find on your your morning show, and they just discovered that they're getting shut down. They're getting laid off in their AIs, and they're just discovering, hey, they're AIs. Anyway, 3 minutes, 33 seconds, 3.5 minutes by a guy named Louis Pican, as in the nut, and he is kind of a nut. I like Louis and I go back a ways, but yeah, Sans, Sans.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating idea of looking at AI being reflective and understanding. And it's like the place that it can get to. I would be remiss if I didn't say, like, in watching the films, I'm sure if I were to ask you what your favorite film is, you have to be diplomatic and say that I love all of my children equally. But I have to say that, in watching, I took some notes here. The Spaceship of Love. Um, I'm a sucker for Bowie, and so that the central character looks a bit like that. I was feeling like some Ziggy Stardust going on, and I was just blown away with what they were capable of pulling off there.
Well, what's also funny about that particular one is it was South by Southwest this year. I've got a lot. I used to live in the UK, and I got a lot of friends at the UK house that were there, and all I did was say, "Watch this," and I got so many texts back of, "WTF did I just watch? It's amazing." And
So good.
yeah, and the guy who made it, Jerry Clark, you could give him a wooden shield and muddy up his face, and he could walk straight onto the set of Vikings. And he's making this cross between Bowie and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and just a truly absurd premise that he made work. And that was one of the reasons why we recognize that is that AI can't statistically absurdity is outside the space under the curve, if you know what I mean. If statistics is showing you a curve and you're doing all this fun stuff under the line, under the bell, above the bell is where we play, where the humans play. And that's why I was really amazed by that. And I love that film too.
Yeah, well, it's what you were saying there earlier, that there's an X factor that when you see it, it just pops and you're like, okay, I don't care about what tech was made or used to make this. I care what the finished product is, and that's blowing my mind right now. I don't know how we got here.
Mhm.
I don't care how we got here. We got here, and it's really powerful. And I'm sure it had to have been a crowd pleaser, Mr. Garlic's last session, just pure gold. It just, again, it doesn't have to be AI. It could be Pixar-esque CGI, but it's just got so much personality to it. You lose yourself in it, and you forget that you could drop this in any sort of film festival and be like, okay, that's a cool short film right there.
It is. Carol Delgado, a Brazilian, and in the note that I wrote her in giving the award, I introduced her to the idea of a 2-minute drill in football. Because if you look at the counter, the film clocks at 2 minutes, seven or 9 seconds total, front to back, and she was able to tell a full story arc about that. Now, would Mr. Garlic make a feature film? Maybe, I don't know. But what I saw in that short 2 minutes, number one, it seemed like a lot longer than 2 minutes because it's packed with things and your attention is drawn to so many aspects. But that was also the aspect of craft that really appealed to us in the sense that the choices that she made, and that's what craft is. Craft is about making choices and dealing with trade-offs. The choices that she made really accomplished two core things. Her choice has guided an audience through an experience to where all they need to do is understand the first 15 seconds, and then it's like, oh, okay, I'm ready to ride. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm ready to ride. So it's comprehensible. And she caused people to care, So to me, that's what craft delivers, is the ability to guide someone through an experience and cause them to care. If you hit that well, that's great. And quite frankly, AI can mimic good craft. Don't get me wrong. It can mimic that. But again, there's that aspect of soul. And soul typically doesn't come from knowledge. It comes from experience. So case in point, I was dealing with an amazingly talented graduate student from UCLA who showed me a film that takes place in the 80s. Well, I lived in the 80s, so I knew the details that mattered if you lived in the 80s. What I saw in this performance was someone interpreting the 80s, just like if I wanted to write a drama that took place in the 17th century, I can be accurate and I can tell a story to a 21st century audience about the 17th century. But if you truly take a sober look, I don't know jack about what it was like to experience the 17th century. So to this, I was kind of curious, and I was saying, why aren't you telling stories about yourself and who you're dealing with right now? Sure, they might be coming of age stories, and we've been coming of age ever since every generation. But the challenge, there's certain eternal challenges, falling in love, dealing with parents, finding a job. But then there's also the unique circumstances of how the game board's set up when you're navigating those eternal challenges. When I was in my 20s, we just worried about getting nuked by the Russians. We didn't worry about climate change or, there was the kind of the challenges that 20-year-olds today are navigating and the stories that are going to emerge from those challenges. I'm excited to see because they're more or less AI natives now.
All right. Well, I know that we could talk for hours, and I want to, sort of wrap up in saying I appreciate that you brought this film festival into existence, and just watching all of the films, there's clearly a need, a desire, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Anyone who's listening to this is, thinking about, okay, I'm making something, but who am I making it for? Can I find an audience? And I know that you have built a system for that you want, you're offering to other film festivals. Where do people find you if they want to know more about holding a film festival or submitting their films to a film festival, maybe even yours? Where can they find you? Because clearly you are somebody, the theme that I'm picking up on here throughout all of it is that you're a maker, you're a builder, and you are some givers, not it's sort of an overly broad term, but like you're trying to create things to help others and bring things to other people, which is something I deeply appreciate in creatives. It's something that motivates me and motivates a lot of creators, is that wanting to share, wanting to help. And obviously with your podcast, you've done that, and now with the film festival. Long-winded way of saying, where can they find you if they are looking to connect with someone of your experience who has a lot to share?
Okay, well, I'll give you a couple of links, and then I will also tell you my exact buck naked self-interest in doing this. The links first are Seattle AI Film Festival, one word, .com. That's the main website. You can navigate through the films. You can navigate through the filmmakers. You can find our contacts there. So Seattle AI Film Festival.com. Step one. Step two is go to Film Freeway, one word, filmfreeway.com. And there you're going to see listings of all the different film festivals out there, from AI to African American to LGBTQ, all the different ways that you can make a film festival. It's there at filmfreeway.com. And that's a good way of just taking a look at what people are looking for, how they're trying to position that. If you're specifically interested in AI and filmmaking, the next one would be called Machine Cinema, one word, Machine Cinema AI. And that's a group. We're affiliated with them. We're trying to stand up the Seattle chapter. These are people who have decided to take a little more serious. So let's put it this way. Machine Cinema is a little more deep water if you're serious to it, but there's growing there's a growing glide path for people who want to professionalize their careers around film. And so those three things: SeattleAIFilmFestival.com, FilmFreeway.com, MachineCinema.ai. Now, to finish, my naked self-interest is that within 20 years, I want to be an older person living in my home. I'm going to have robots, but I don't want them to act like effing robots. I want to be able to communicate to them in natural language like I want. I want them to do the jobs roughly like I tell them to, but without all the step-by-step. And then if they want to do some of the extra stuff, yeah, well, let's talk about it. But I don't have faith that that experience can be engineered in today's tech environment. And the AI dystopia that I truly worry about is not Terminator robots crushing human skulls sci-fi. Is it a possibility? Yeah, fine. Just like the sun blowing up. Yeah, the math tells me that. The AI dystopia I fear the most is the world is one giant airport where everything is accessible, everything is packaged, everything is convenient, and it has no soul. And you're just marking time. I don't know about you, but I'd rather deal with killer robots because then I'm awake, then I'm in action and stuff. I don't want to puddle. And to tell the truth, the mean or the median, all that stuff they taught you in statistics, we're still talking about statistical reasoning with AI. And actually, it's a beautiful thing. We're finding out through AI, there's actually a lot of reality in a lot of the world that can be modeled very well using statistical reasoning. But it's sort of like the economist wondering about whether or not they should marry this person, and the other economist says, "Well, you need to make a list of costs and benefits, and then go for it." You go, "No, man, this is serious."
Yep.
I know the limits of statistical reasoning, and that's not a plaintive cry that things are going to go bad. What I'm simply saying is that if we can inject the storytellers and the creativity early in the process, we stand a much better chance of humanizing the technology. And the only way I've seen an effective way of humanizing anything is we make it our own. We put a human face on it and we make art. And that's why people can look at art and they kind of understand their identity, where they fit in the world, how they deal with other people. And that's why despots persecute the storyteller. They don't go after people who hang drywall. With all respect to the building trades, they go after the storyteller. Because if you monkey around with how someone sees themselves in the world and where they fit, watch out. But that's the purpose of storytelling, is to help people navigate that. And quite frankly, given the amazing things you can do with AI, I want to make sure that we have the better angels making the best content that has the widest audience. So fundamentally, as a film festival, we're in the Jedi business. We want to empower people to tell these amazing stories using AI to where the general public says, "Oh, wow, that's cool." And then if we can get that emotional kick, then talking to people about some of the importance of how you look at provenance and even potential ownership of intellectual property becomes less of an abstract thing, and it becomes more of a, yeah, I prefer to live in that kind of world. So anyway, that's my long-winded answer of saying, why am I doing this? I have my altruistic, but also I'm very selfish. I don't want to be an old man dealing with would you like to update? Hey, we've got a new feature. I don't want that.
Yeah, we want to live in the gritty, lived-in version of the future that George Lucas envisioned, and not some sort of eternal airport, which has triggered all kinds of existential dread in me. That's the vision I'm going to be going to bed with.
Everybody's got an opinion on film, and everybody's been stuck in the airport. That's where we want to. That's where those are the two poles.
All right. Well, you're helping bring about the better vision of the future because you're giving an avenue to storytellers so that they can bring their gifts, share their gifts, and let us feel that little bit of soul. I thank you very much for coming on. And I look forward to seeing what happens with the Seattle AI Film Festival next year and beyond.
Well, if I could give the quick roadmap, it's quite simple. We are speaking in May of 2025. In July, for Seattle Tech Week, we're going to have AI Movie Night, which is where we've curated from the festival, but I'm also going to bring in some pretty exciting guest speakers, but also we'll do it in a downtown club. So this is more of kind of like a party to show the future. And then in late October during Seattle AI Week, we're going to have the 24-hour film challenge, where we're going to have a carefully curated group of about 60 or 70 storytellers and developers who are going to work off of scripts. There will be an open category, but they're mainly going to be working off some scripts. And then we'll have a public screening on Halloween. And then from November 1st, that's when the next call for films for the film festival, 26, which will be in the April timeframe. And then the ultimate moonshot will be doing pop-up AI movie night during the World Cup when it comes to Seattle in June, July of next year. So that's sort of the roadmap to where we're trying to grow in significant, scalable ways with each event to build towards a moonshot. But we want to and intend to establish Seattle as a tier 1 global city, even though it's a global phenomenon right now. But we want to establish Seattle as a tier 1 global city for both narrative and technical innovation, and basically get the best storytellers in the world to come over here. So global footprint with local impact, I guess you call it that.
I'll have to make my way out there for some of this because, and I hope the moonshot comes to pass.
Oh, yeah. But again, no sleep till Brooklyn.
All right. Thanks. And we'll talk to you again soon. Be well.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Creative AI Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or visit creativeaipod.com.